I'm going to talk a little bit lighter because basically start from 2.5 years ago, and this idea of translating the Chinese famous publication Wenwu into English, and for the first time to provide non-Chinese readers, because most of you probably it's only icing on the cake. But for those who are interested in Chinese antiquity, but not yet master the Chinese language, this really would be 雪中送炭, as we say. And when the idea was tossed around, I was contacted by the publisher. This is the Eastview Press, based in Minnesota. And I worked pretty hard on a testing piece. It's only 7 pages, actually 4 pages, 7,000 words. And as a professional translator for almost 22 years, 7,000 words normally take me just barely 2 days of work. But this one, despite I myself, as a former archaeologist trained in Peking University from 78 to 82, and then went to master program in anthropology and studied 5 years under Professor Catherine Lindorf, and worked also 3 years as a professional archaeologist. And all these combined, it still take me more than nearly 2 weeks to finish this work, because it's just so much of the stuff that you probably all aware, all these challenging concepts, a lot of time it doesn't exist in English language to begin with. And I remember at the time I was working on that, one of my translator colleagues, because I was served as the chief of the Chinese language division for American Translators Association. And one of my fellow friends who is the chair for the exams, and picking on me, said, Gary, you are so old and dealing with the thing that not even for real put that much time. And my answer for him is very simple. I say, well, even you're the best soccer player, you cannot guarantee every shoot you will go. But I can assure you one thing, if you don't shoot, you will never go. I said, I'm just the simple kicking. And turned out a few months later, this project became real. And now it's 2.5 years later, we are actually on the fourth version, book. It's already in press, and 3 of the previous issue you can already see. So now I'm just going to share with everybody with the process when we were working on this, the challenge we have been facing, and some of the approach we are taking in working on this. Let's see how challenges. And first of all is the inconsistency. And this is not just from China's side. In the US side, there is inconsistencies. In China's side, there are also inconsistencies. And if I give you a quick example, on the China side, there are at least the English translation of some major institutions who are dealing with archaeology. And what happened is one time a friend of mine in Kaohsiung told me 3 researchers from that same institution submitted the article with English abstract, and they translate their own institution in 3 different versions. And of course, on the west side, it's also many of the things are being turned into a variety of different formats, depending on different flavor of the particular individual, the scholar or the school, or somebody maybe from archaeology side, some from Chinese history study, and some from the art history angle. and of course yet another from the museum. And so all of these kind of coming with their different traditions, and they start bringing into their different way of rendering. And what happened is a lot of time they were talking about the same thing from the Chinese source. And I see from the beginning, this is one of our major challenges. And it's not going to be an easy solution, but in our journal, we are trying very hard try to consolidate some of these and bring them together. Oh. And the next is, with the internet, one thing for sure, you all know about the great firewalls, but that great firewall is only blocking the English materials in, but it does not prevent the Chinese material out. And what happened is we will end up a lot of scholars who are English kind of still lack of fluency, but they will have to struggle looking at the dictionary. And I have to say, I checked some of these existing Chinese English dictionaries, especially the ones published in China. It's a lot more to be desired if you look into deeper. And so that, therefore, it's a lot of them bump into when you Google all these Chinese stuff, association of a Chinese term with the English coming into, for people who are not familiar, thought that was, then you start to keep quoting wrong one after wrong one and make it even harder. And the third issue is also sometimes the Chinese term and the English term, although on the surface is a one-to-one translation, but when you look into, I will give you an example, and once you look into, they actually have a different content, and the range are not the same. They overlap quite apart, but when you go deeper, it's become different. And also, the other thing is, of course, a lot of concept, object, artifact that we discover in China, a lot of time it was the first time. And there is nothing similar in the rest part of the world. And there is very difficult to translate it into still meaningful way. And there always, I call it a lazy way, then it's just using pinyin. And I already see this has become a trend. A lot of Chinese scholars and even Western scholars start going that way because it is convenient for people who are already familiar with the subject, and it really doesn't hurt. But for me, it really bothers me if we are trying to introduce this concept to a new readership, a new audience, and this is going to be far from enough. And people have to take at least 2 years of college before they can read it. And the other is also archaeology right now, not only the material that we are dealing with that can really encompass a wide range of different field aspect or professions even, and but also with the more new development, all these new approaches they used, that also reveal more, that compound that same situation. I have to say, I have to ask bricklayers, construction workers in the correct wording on the brick patterns. And I even have to go to the tailors and asking about the clothing terminologies when we were discussing some of these findings. And the other is also, as we all know, the language develops, and it's never static. And English also not an exception. And we start changing just recently. I heard the new decision, the internet, would not need capitalized anymore. And now it's all lowercase. And these are just constantly changing. And when you're dealing with Chinese changing, also English changing, and that's also added the difficulty. And the other thing on the seventh, I want to also mention, with the economic development in China, and this newfound pride and confidence, and which this has been always exist, but now it's become a fuel driven a lot of this very strong cultural centralism or nationalism among scholars. Or, of course, the government is the most important player in this, is trying to projecting the Chinese as Chinese to the rest of the world. Unfortunately, language has its own rules, and once you're dealing with a wide range of the population use that language, and a wide range of people with a wide range of educational background. Oh, some of them never even heard, despite China is so big, and some of them probably haven't heard much, and know very few about China, and you try to make this different concept completely alien to them, and it's only turn them off, not even get a chance to look further. And so the other thing is also the last one is also about the archaeological development, and terms start changing. And I also have to add a little bit that is as you have dealing with Chinese antiquities, you also discovered some of the ancient Chinese also have this very strong discriminatory attitude toward the one that is not Orthodox Chinese or Han Chinese, and that's also added to it. So let's go quickly go to some. What did I do? Okay, now I give you an inconsistency in China. 全国重点文物保护单位, what an important term, and it's Chinese government designated this kind of thing, but now you look at it, even the two Chinese published dictionaries translated as different terms. And the other thing is the organization who are in charge of this, that is 国家文物局, does not even have an English website. And let alone to have, they actually have the authority to get this officialized, whatever the term is supposed to be. But they didn't even exercise that. And now you look at this with translation offered a variety of different ways from different sources. And in the end, we did find out a document that is from official organ of the organization, and this is finally they have a Chinese and English version of the thing, and then talking about this is how the translation it is. So for situation like this, as our journal, we will adopt whatever the official term exists, and despite how well the English translation is, that's secondary. And here is the inconsistencies in the West. And now look at this is the very famous chapter in Bangu's Hou Han Shu. And look at one of our friends right here. This is the translation. I didn't know where he got that from, but I just want to show you how many versions there is just for this. And we finally went with Professor Anthony Barbier-Law's way, basically just as our editorial board discussion, weigh all these and we picked one. Some of them we almost just how we feel randomly picked. But for us, it's important to keep it consistent in all the articles, in all the different issues. So for that reason, this is how we determine. And about Chinglish, and this is something I took this picture. And you look at this, it's a very literary translation. Chinese soil restaurant. I wonder if you want to venture. This is trilingual from Cambodian and Chinese and English. And when I was in Phnom Penh early this year, I saw this. I just couldn't resist to have this. And this is the semantic variations I'm talking about. And of course, I see a trend now. More and more scholars start going with pinyin direction and use Yangtze River. However, some of the research review, and also, by the way, yesterday in our opening section, Professor Barry also still using the old way, Yangtze. And I want to point out some research I digged into through both Merriam-Webster and Oxford English Dictionary on the history, on the usage of these terms. As a matter of fact, both this Yangtze is appeared very, very early. It's in about 15th, 16th century. And because of the Western missionaries arrived in China, first thing they see is the last section of Changjiang, which is the Yangtze River actually covers. In reality, if you read the Chinese name Yangtzejiang doesn't represent the entire river, only represent the last section of that same river. But because the missionaries, that's the river they first see. So when they making map, no matter how long, that's the whole thing. So that's the what I mean. In English, Yangtze is really not equivalent to the Chinese term Yangtzejiang. It's not the same. Yangtze in English actually equivalent to the Chinese word Changjiang. And that's actually also a lot of time, Changjiang in Chinese was translated in the Yangtze River this way. However, some people now started using Yangtze River using the pinyin. And in my opinion, that's not quite proper because Yangtze, when you use pinyin, you actually translate that Chinese term by the term itself. Then you're only talking about the last section, not the entire river. And so that's, of course, this has something to do with the new trend. I guess maybe also some generation gaps up there. I'm one of those old guard, I have to admit. And the other thing is, 泥质陶. This is a very interesting term. Initially, when we translate it as clay pottery, I didn't even give a whole lot of thought about it. And just as if you look at our journal, the first issue, this term all over the places. And then we, as a part of the caution, we hired an editor who is a native English-speaking editor, purely editor, and we purposely make sure he knew nothing about Chinese language and knew nothing about Chinese archaeology. So that way we can have actually a good filter, because otherwise a lot of perspective, I can bet you these scholars who know Chinese very well, you will be unconsciously fill in the gap with your knowledge in Chinese. That may something you talk about make no sense to English speaker. And this guy pointed out, said, Garry, our whole pottery are clay pottery. Well, then we start thinking, oh yeah, that makes sense. But then how we talk about when you compare to the pottery that is with sand temper, or either fine sand or coarse sand. So this is something that we come back to it later. And this other thing is, one of the article, we have this beautiful earrings. And you see this is the picture of the same pair of earring. And the bottom is the original Chinese article's caption. And we simply did not think much to translate the term side view, front view, and back view. And I have to say, my colleague here, Rachel, was sitting right there, and sent me an email, said, Garry, this front view? Well, I just haven't think of that when she says, well, I said, well, yeah, maybe. I started checking around with all my American friends. As a matter of fact, I went to all these Macy's, Rich's, go to their jewelry section. And they all said this is a front view. Well, then, what do you think this? If this is the left side front of the right ear, well, how are you going to deliver this caption that both sides actually is the opposite? And then how you deal with the other side? And this is really, it's taken me actually a few weeks of actually field investigations until the last, right before Christmas, I finally walked into a store, and this lady was very helpful. She says, Garry, this kind of thing, we're sure this is a friend, but we don't really know what to call that, because usually the other side is all the same both ways. And so in order for you to know this, you can't ask people who sell jewelry. You need to ask people who fix or make jewelry. Well, I said, who that would be? So go to a jeweler right out of the door, just next door to it. And I showed this 3 picture to the jeweler. Lo and behold, she instantly gave me the right expression. Here in the room, you all native speakers, would you venture what is the actually correct term for this? You know, look at it, one side is closer to your cheek. The other side is the other way. But obviously in the Chinese expression, they were thinking this air actually is angled. But they are thinking of in a flat sense. That's why the one to the cheek was referred as the front and the other as the rear. But the correct term, that's called the inside. That's called the outside. So that saved me from having to explain from the right ear, left side of the right ear, or right ear, right side of the right ear. And this is just one thing I have to say. Sometimes it's a pain in the neck, but it is a lot of fun. We keep learning things, and I couldn't imagine I started learning things that a lot of native speakers never even thought about. And here is the one that I'm talking about that doesn't exist in the English world. These unique artifacts that find actually the top one is wide ranged in the steppes, and in China it's a lot of them. And also the bottom one, Hongshan Cultural Albano, these, and so far I haven't really seen anybody can give a hint that any other culture has something even similar, either in shape or function or whatever that we can reference. I haven't seen any. And so we will have to really beating our brains and try to figure out, and it's my professor, Professor Linda, finally came out a term. And from its function, because this was clearly used for the horses, and usually it's the straps or chain links that go through these and then go different directions on the horse, either just a bare riding horse or maybe even sometimes the horse drawing the chariot. And she called this a strap crossing. And we look at it, well, that makes sense. Well, if it doesn't have a name, we have a right to come up with a name. So that is, and one other thing is what we do in our we call in our own term, we call the triad or dyad expression, which is that sometimes certain things after you translate it, it will merge the different Chinese concept into the same term. And then you couldn't tell different anymore. And furthermore, sometimes you could also cause linguistic logical conflict. For example, bow, the Guan is bow, bird is bow, all these. So we use the slashed way. Oh, here, let me quickly go through some just interesting example. This is Tongxiu Kuan, and we initially translated as just full sleeve length, which actually wasn't quite right, and it was rightfully pointed out. And then we started looking into, and this is the one that I have to go to the tailor and ask them what sleeve length would be. And he actually measured me because I wasn't quite sure his explanation is enough. So he measured me the sleeve length, contrary to our common understanding. It is started from the middle of your collar and to the end of the sleeve. So at that time, we figured out, okay, well then we have to divide the number by half. So the sleeve length is half of what is described. And that's all we could at that moment we discovered. But later on, one of the fellow selling sewing machines and has been doing that generations and very familiar with these sewing terms. And he looked at it, he says, we call that calf to calf. So now we know that's the right term. And here also the brick laying, and in the Chinese archaeological report, you will see often this term they call the Sansun Yiding, which after the research of my colleagues Xin here, and it turned out the Chinese archaeology using the wrong expression. It wasn't even Sansun Yiding. And the Sansun Yiding, if you look at that middle one and that brick sample, that is Sansun Yiding. But what the archaeology describe, they calling this Sansun Yiding. That's totally different. The ding was stand up, not lying down. And so for me, I often have to send this picture to the report author and ask them to tell me exactly which way that brick is so I can deliver it in the correct sense. Okay, this is another quick one. And you see the official definition. When I was looking for home, I thought, gee, according to this, the demise would be very good. But my colleague from the Rotary, who owns a funeral home, he said, Garry, that doesn't give any kind of respect. That's not even as good as just dead. So obviously that's what I'm talking about, language changing. And people don't really think of this, the old usage as often. And so we end up have to just simply using pass away. And okay, the approach, I will make this very quick. This is another thing that one example we dealt with. Initially, I'm trying to ask a question. When we were editing this journal, which side, what authority we actually have, and which side is our primary service customer, whatever. Are we serving the author? Doesn't matter. Whatever the reader thinks, just get their thing out, or we serve the reader to make sure they understood. And this is the example, one of the graduate students' article, and transcribed still inscriptions was with just this short one with more than 50 mistakes. And initially, this is the first one we encountered this. And initially, we talked with when we say, well, what do we do when this thing? You should just respect the author. But then it turned out, yeah, we tried. It started making no sense. You think about the character recognized wrong, the punctuation in the wrong place. You cannot translate it anymore. It just could not even make any sense. So eventually, we have to just went ahead. with the correct way, because the good thing is this article also included the picture of the original stele. So we simply translate based on the stele. And so, quick thing, we establish a glossary. Each article we translated, if we think it's quite possible it appear again, we put it in, and right now it's many thousand terms in it already. And all our translators have access to it. In the future, we wanted to open this and for anybody in the field being able to at least criticize or make suggestions, and hopefully it saves somebody's time if you don't have a ready term anyway. And so that's one thing. But of course, we have a lot of other ones. For the time reason, I'm going to just cut it off quickly, and let's go to the end. This is something I have to advertise a little bit. And this Sunday from 11 to 12:30, we're going to have our first inaugural award ceremony for the Chinese to English translation Young Scholars Contest. And 24 scholars worldwide submitted their entry, and we have the winner. And come to join us. And after that, we also have live lunch. And enjoy it, hopefully.